Well, his testimony was arguably the most anticipated on Capitol Hill in years. Robert Mueller in the hot seat. Democrats hyping it as must-see TV, expecting Mueller to finally pull back the curtain on his Russia investigation. But in the end, the hearings were more like monosyllabic stale reruns, a Cliff Notes version of the 400-plus page report. No bombshells, no smoking gun. For 7 hours, the former special counsel dodged, deflected, declined, and occasionally answered questions from 2 congressional committees about Russian interference in U.S. elections and the role President Trump may or may not have played 3 years ago. And the big headlines, stuff we already knew. Russia meddled in the 2016 election and continues to interfere. Mueller says Donald Trump's conduct was problematic. He wasn't fully cooperative, but the report neither exonerated him nor concluded he committed a crime.
So the report did not conclude that he did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what about total exoneration? Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
And when Donald Trump called your investigation a witch hunt, that was also false, was it not?
I'd like to think so, yes.
Well, your investigation is not a witch hunt, is it?
It is not a witch hunt.
When the president said the Russian interference was a hoax, that was false, wasn't it?
True.
So despite all that, President Trump said it had been a very good day for himself and Republicans.
The performance was obviously not very good. He had a lot of problems, but what he showed more than anything else is that this whole thing has been 3 years of embarrassment and waste of time for our country. And you know what? The Democrats thought they could win an election like this. I think they hurt themselves very badly for 2020.
Joining me now from Los Angeles, CNN's senior political analyst Ron Brownstein and former assistant U.S. Attorney David Katz. Okay, so if this was meant to be the movie version of the Mueller report, it seemed to be not so much all the president's men, but maybe more like the English patient. And from the Trump-cheering Fox News, the headline, unmitigated train wreck. To the conservative Wall Street Journal, the Mueller show goes bust. Mueller and Dems' low-energy performance was an optics disaster, read one headline in the Washington Post. Over at the liberal-leaning Vox.com, former special counsel Robert Mueller's congressional testimony on Wednesday was a farce and a tragedy. So, Ron, to you, at the end of the day, were there any winners from this?
No, and the biggest loser was the American public. All the people in the American public who have not been able to read a 440-page report written in dense legalese, studded with double negatives of the sort that even, the one soundbite you could find from Jerry Nadler and the special counsel is a double negative in which he kind of affirms it. I think Bob Mueller obviously made a choice that he was going to be as minimally responsive as possible, and that he was going to, in essence, accept no civic responsibility to help Americans understand what he concluded, what happened, and why, beyond what he put in his report. He would not even really reaffirm his report. He would not even read from his report, only responding in his kind of grunts when Democrats did so. I mean, he did the country a great service by, plowing through this incredibly difficult investigation. But I think there was a failure of imagination on his part, I think, today, to understand what his real role is in this entire play. And part of it is to help the country understand what happened. No one is better positioned to do so, and yet he chose not to.
And to that point, there was one answer from Mueller during his first appearance, which sort of indicated that he believed the president had committed obstruction of justice. But then in the second hearing, he was forced to clarify. Here's both those exchanges.
I'd like to ask you, the reason, again, that you did not indict Donald Trump is because of OLC opinion stating that you cannot indict a sitting president, correct?
That is correct. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Liu, who said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion." That is not the correct way to say it. As we say in the report, and as I said at the opening, we did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime.
So David, and to expand on Ron's point, could Robert Mueller here avoided all that confusion? Had he just been more responsive in his answers? As Ron said, he didn't want to move beyond the simplest of statements or quotes from the report.
Well, Mueller is not about the optics. Mueller, I think, performed a very valuable service, and I think that he made quite an impression today, because think where the inquiry would have been without Mueller having appeared. Now there's a groundwork. Mueller said some very important things, and he said it to the nation. And there are some people who don't watch CNN who really don't know anything about the report. They heard today it's not a hoax. It's not a witch hunt. There's very strong and compelling evidence of a conspiracy, of Trump accepting help from the Russians and knowing for his events that he would do things in coordination with what the Russians were about to do to help his campaign, because the Russians wanted him to lose and wanted Hillary to be defeated. And as to the obstruction of justice, there's a roadmap of 4 different counts of obstruction of justice where every single element was met. Everybody knows that if you meet every element of 4 crimes, you get charged. The only reason President Trump was not charged is because of this OLC opinion. And so Mueller performed a very valuable service by putting in front of the Congress what the Congress has to do. People maybe wanted Mueller to be the nation's savior, and he's not. Congress is going to have to be the savior. The Democrats have the majority. They have the right to bring impeachment articles. I think they're going to bring them. And if I can say one last thing, because I worked with Adam Schiff in the government under the Department of Justice, under the Reagan administration, Schiff would be doing this if a Democrat had received this help from Russia. Just like Mueller would be doing this if a Democrat had become president, receiving the same kind of shameful assistance and obstructing justice the same way President Trump is very persuasively accused of doing in the Mueller report.
Ron, just very quickly, did the Democrats build this up too much? This was just another moment when, a day of reckoning had finally arrived for Donald Trump, and it wasn't.
Sure, it was very clear. Mueller had made clear he was not going to cooperate. And I don't really agree, Dave. I think it was much more than optics. I think all of the things you said, he didn't say. He did not say that Congress needed to be the one to deal with this. He did not say that the president had met the conditions, even though he kind of walked through them. In fact, he disputed that conclusion. And he had the opportunity today, without going beyond the boundaries of the report, to simply tell the story to the American people, what the Russians did, what the Trump campaign did in response, and what the Trump presidency has done in response to his investigation. I don't see how that was a violation of his studied nonpartisanship to provide a common set of facts to the American people, instead of allowing each side to kind of have their own portrayal of this. In fact, you could argue that that would be a nonpartisan civic service. But I think his vision of his role was simply too crimped, and it is part of a general pattern in which many of our institutions are struggling to deal with the magnitude of the departure from tradition and norms that this presidency represents. I just think it was a failure of imagination on his part not to provide more guidance to the country about what he thought happened and what he thought Congress, if anything, should do about it.
Almost 200 times, though, we should know this, Mueller deflected or declined to answer a question. Here's a sample.
I direct you to the report. Rely on the report. I send you back to the report. I can't beyond what's in the report. I am not going to get into that. I can't get into the discussions on that. We can't get into it.
So, David, was that because of the restrictions placed on Mueller by the Department of Justice and those last-minute guidelines? Or was that because he was just reluctant to say anything more?
Well, 2 things. Number one, Mueller was a Department of Justice employee. He was not an independent counsel the way Starr was. And so he felt very much bound by these rules. And because he's a particularly rule-bound guy, that's obviously one of the reasons why a Republican, Rosenstein, in a Republican administration, picked this Republican Mueller to investigate the Republican president. So they knew a lot about Mueller's character and how Mueller would act. They knew that he was not the kind of person who would duel it out with Barr. Yes, Barr got the better of him because Barr's a street fighter, and I don't think it's bad that Mueller is not a street fighter. Mueller has the personality he has. That's why he's chosen. But in his own way, Mueller left a lot of things. He said there's 14 different investigations the FBI has underway of the Russian influence and what Russia has done to us. One of the reasons I think he said that is to make it very difficult for Barr to disapprove those FBI investigations going forward, or to try to squash the indictments that could be coming down because of that misconduct. So I think there was a lot of things that Mueller brought out. I think that they're going to continue the investigation. The next people are going to be the obstruction of justice people themselves, like Don McGahn is going to be called to the stand. Now, there is a dramatic high optics witness. They're probably going to call Corey Lewandowski to the stand. He wasn't a government official of any sort. And they'll call other people, John, that will demonstrate what's going on. They have to win some of those cases in court.
Right.
But I think today leads toward an impeachment inquiry. The Democrats have shown that they can legislate and help the country, protect health care, increase domestic spending, and they can also impeach. And I think they're going to go forward with impeachment inquiries in the fall, but they have to go through the courts, and they had to have this day. They had to get Mueller on the record to say what was in the Mueller report. They can't wait around for people to read the highlights of a 448-page report.
We're going to get to, we're going really short on time. I want to get to Robert Mueller and the moments when he was confused, struggling to recall key details. Have a look at this.
Is it accurate to say your investigation found no evidence that members of the Trump campaign were involved in the theft or publication of the Clinton campaign-related emails?
I don't know. I don't know what they, well.
On July 22nd, through WikiLeaks, thousands of these emails that were stolen by the Russian government appeared, correct? That's on page 6 of the report. This is the WikiLeaks posting of those emails.
I can't find it quickly, but please continue.
The filmmaker and activist Michael Moore tweeted this: a frail old man, unable to remember things, stumbling, refusing to answer basic questions. I said it in 2017 and Mueller confirmed it today. All you pundits and moderates and lame Dems who told the public to put their faith in the esteemed Robert Mueller, let's shut up from now on. You know, Ron, did this all eventually just sort of play into the hands of Donald Trump?
Look, the substance, as we've been talking about, did not play into the hands of Donald Trump. The things that Mueller said today about the conduct of the president were extremely damaging. What played into his hands, I believe, was Mueller's refusal, conscious refusal, to knit this together in a way that would help Americans understand what happened and thus make their own judgment about what to do next. It's possible that Americans may conclude that even if they believe the offenses of the president justify impeachment in the abstract, it's still not worth it in the practical, given how far we are into his presidency and the unlikelihood of the Senate moving forward, whatever the House does. But the fact is that I think Mueller got himself in this position today, where he often seemed unsure, kind of tentative, and so forth, precisely because he did not set forward at the beginning a clear version of events, which would have been everyone then responding to his narrative instead of him kind of being picked apart page by page of this voluminous report.
And just very quickly, one last question to you, because what we learned is that Mueller made the point that Trump could be indicted once he leaves office. Does that mean that Donald Trump, as he runs for re-election for 2020, is now the candidate who has the most to lose? He's facing a possible indictment after he loses, if he lost office, and then a possible jail term.
Absolutely.
He's got the most to lose. He absolutely has a huge amount to lose. I'm sorry.
So, David, you guys
he absolutely has a huge amount to lose, but he has a huge amount to lose anyway. His son might very well be indicted by a succeeding administration. So might Kushner. So there's a lot that Trump wants to win, but the Democrats want to win really bad, too. That's what elections are about, and they're going to fight this one out, battle royale.
I'll get Ron to finish off. Let me just jump in, Ron.
I agree, John. I mean, that is a very unusual situation where the president precisely could face indictment, not only on the obstruction charges, but also potentially the campaign finance violations with the cover-up payments to the women in the National Enquirer. Yeah, I mean, it's one more log on a big fire that has some people predicting we may have 160 million people vote in 2020, the highest turnout since 1908 before women had the right to vote. It would not be surprising, given everything that's at stake, if we see that kind of engagement.
Okay, there's a lot in all of this, obviously. It's great having you both with us, Ron and David. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.